Hey everybody, it's Ron, and now that the 7th and final issue of The Deadly Duo is out, I thought I'd share my thoughts on this fantastic miniseries from comic book legend Mark Silvestri. This book has been in the works for a long time, and it's finally finished, so let's dive right into it. I'm a pretty big comic book fan, but for whatever reason, I never owned a lot of Mark Silvestri stuff. Maybe because I'm more of a DC guy, and he did a lot of Marvel work before the whole Image movement, which I also was a little too young for at the time. So it was cool to have him on a Batman project. I was surprised how scratchy his style is. There's a lot of cross-hatching and it looks very fluid and effortless, but I bet this book took a long time to draw because some of the splash pages are incredible. I think a lot of people, myself included, were shocked by how solid the writing is. Because a lot of times you can get some mixed results when an artist tries their hand at writing as well. His depiction of Batman is similar to Hush in some ways. I know Silvestri and Jim Lee were kind of coming up around the same time, but he draws Gotham City in a similar way, and the blue and gray Batman costume is the same as well, which I prefer to whatever modern costume Batman has at the moment. I'm glad he could pretty much do whatever he wanted since this is under the Black Label imprint, and that means it's an out-of-continuity story. Silvestri shows a lot of restraint with his first big Batman project because he doesn't jam every villain into the story just so he can draw them. It's actually very focused because Batman is really only dealing with the Joker and the new villain that Silvestri created for the series. You know the art is good when Harvey Bullock is just as interesting to look at as Batman. And I love the opening with the two of them investigating a murder in an apartment because it sets a great tone for the book. We also get to see Batman doing some detective work, which is a promising start to the series. It's an interesting choice to have Batman bounce off of Bullock instead of Gordon this time around. There's also a good mystery right away with Harley in sort of a Silence of the Lambs type situation with the main villain of the book. This is definitely one of those comics where I was glad to get the individual issues every month instead of waiting for the collection because the covers are all really great and the quality is top notch. At the end of each issue, there are a few pages displaying the pencil work, and that was one of my favorite parts about getting a new issue every month. I usually don't double dip, but I actually got two of the variant covers because Kelly Jones and Mike Mignola drew covers specifically for this book, and I'm a fan of both of them, so I couldn't resist. Silvestri's rendition of the Joker isn't my favorite. That's probably one of the only knocks I have on the art. I don't think it's terrible. There are a few panels throughout the series where the Joker looks demented and scary, but his playful personality made him a little less intimidating in this story, even though he still does some horrible things. Some of the Joker's attempts at humor were a little silly for me, but it didn't overpower the serious nature of the story. I think a lot of people were worried that Batman and the Joker would consciously work together and put aside their differences and become allies or something because of the title, but luckily that's not what happens at all. Batman is basically forced to have Joker tag along, and he's willing to do this because Jim Gordon's life is on the line. The body parts being sent to the police one by one was really effective because we're made to believe Gordon is slowly being mutilated. And I believed it at first and thought it was a pretty ballsy thing for Mark Silvestri to do. I was pretty relieved when he revealed that Gordon's eye was still intact because it would have been weird to have a one-eyed Gordon at the end of this book. The beginning of this comic centers around a slew of murders, and Batman quickly comes into contact with these super strong Jokerized monsters, which seemed like a gimmicky thing at first, but it all fits nicely into the story and makes more sense as it goes along. So like I said, Batman teams up with the Joker for the sake of Jim Gordon, and Joker teams up with Batman to get Harley, but it's really for his own amusement, and it's also never that simple with the Joker. So there's more to that. This book takes its time to slowly unravel what's going on, and it becomes more clear when we're introduced to Donald Sims, who owns a company called SimTech that is affiliated with Wayne Industries. Silvestri gives us an amazing flashback sequence showing how Sims lost his eye at his daughter's wedding that was crashed by the Joker. Amanda Sims ends up dying because the cops and Batman fail to save her, so we're made to believe that Donald Sims is the villain pulling all the strings to get his revenge, but Silvestri takes it one step further and makes Amanda Sims the undead villain of this entire series. I like that Donald Sims basically pulls a Frankenstein and experiments with synthetic DNA at his company to bring his daughter back. The science of it all is a stretch, but it doesn't really matter because the story is so well told that I just went along with it. I also like this concept because I like the horror aspects of Batman's world, but Silvestri mixes it up because it's not just straight horror. It's also a detective book as well as an action book because he comes up with some really cool tech for Batman to use. While the Joker and Batman do in fact team up, Joker is basically Batman's prisoner for most of this story, and the mask Batman has the Joker wear while he's in the Batcave was a weird choice. I feel like he could have just went with a blindfold, but maybe that wasn't as interesting to draw. It does end up being pretty iconic looking, and I think it's one of the images that people will remember the most from this series. Batman is put through a lot of different scenarios and ends up failing most of these tests, and that really hammers home the idea that the Batman is a street-level hero with no powers at the end of the day, and he's not perfect, even though he's still a hero. The bullet train sequence is a good example of this, and it's a standout sequence. Nightwing is used here instead of Robin, and he plays a minor role, but his back and forth with Bruce is very well done. Silvestri gets their relationship right, and he really understands the Batman mythos. I appreciate that Silvestri tries not to make it all grim and serious by adding some humor, but most of it is just a little too silly for me. I know I said that for the Joker, but Catwoman calling Nightwing Buttwing, for example, is also something I could do without. I don't like Harley's current year costume. I wish he just used her classic outfit the whole time. And I also don't like Batwoman's current costume either. I'm not sure if Silvestri had to use them because DC told him to, but I just figured he would have more freedom under the Black Label imprint, but I guess not. I was worried Batman and the Joker leaping at each other in the last issue would mean they were going to have some huge brawl, and I wouldn't buy that the Joker could physically go toe-to-toe with Batman, but Batman just breaks his jaw immediately on the next page, so that was pretty awesome. It turns out Amanda Sims threatened to tell everyone who Batman is to get her revenge on the Joker for what he did at her wedding. And we find out the Joker was doing everything he could so that didn't happen. And this is believable because if you know anything about the history of the Joker and Batman, you would know that it would ruin the fun for the Joker if he ever found out who Batman was. So that was well done. The structure of this story was almost perfect. It was really just some of the dialogue that was a little iffy, which is weird because it's mixed with some really great lines as well, like Amanda Sims saying, "What kills me makes me stronger," and Batman saying, "The Joker is the most dangerous madman I've ever encountered. He's ended countless lives. I could let him fall and be rid of him forever, but no one dies on my watch." Lines like that made me trust Silvestri early on because he clearly understands Batman. And he also creates a villain who makes him second guess that code a little bit, which was interesting. I kind of hoped that Amanda Sims would be killed off to really cement this as a one-off miniseries, but she seems to be turning herself into a vigilante at the end of this, and I don't know how I feel about that. I guess that's leaving room for a sequel, but like I said, this is just a Black Label book that's outside of continuity. If this series was in the pages of the Batman Monthly series, then I'd say this was a great origin for a new Batman villain to exist in his ongoing series, but it's not, so I feel like she should have died. There would have been more closure to this miniseries that way, but overall, this was a really fun book. The art was solid throughout. It wasn't bogged down with continuity. The action was great, and really the only two problems I had were some of the silly dialogue with the Joker and Harley and a little bit of Catwoman, and then the idea of keeping Amanda Sims alive because I'm not sure if there's a plan for her in a sequel or another book, so I guess I just don't know what's going on with that. I would give this a solid 8 out of 10. I definitely recommend it. And I think Mark Silvestri should write more stuff because, as it turns out, he's pretty good. So please be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. And let me know what you thought of this series in the comments. Thanks for watching.